Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to National City Christian Church for our weekly Music at Midday concert. My name is Mike McMahon. We're always happy to welcome people who might have wandered in for the very first time. So if this is your first time at National City, we are happy to have you. I think you're going to really be wowed by the organ here because we not only have this very large instrument in the front, but another rather substantial instrument in the back. And although they are independent of one another, they also are joined together so that the organist can play both organs from this front console, and you'll hear sound coming at you from all different directions, but it blends beautifully in this space. If you'd like to know more about the organ, please feel free to come up after the recital to see the console and just check out all the options that the organist has. And also, of course, to greet our artist, who I'll introduce in just a moment. There's also a display in the back of the sanctuary that has lots of really interesting information about the pipe organ, and in particular about this particular organ at National City Christian Church. If you are not on our email list, we would be delighted to add you. By getting our email notifications, you'll learn about what's coming up each week, and you'll also receive a link every week to the recording that we have made of the live stream. So that means if you're not able to make it in person, you can enjoy these concerts at home. The series is self-supporting, meaning that we rely on you to help us keep it going. So if you're able to make a donation by cash or check, you can do that. The collection plates that are located in front and in the back of the sanctuary. It's really delightful today to be able to introduce Roy Belfield. He was here last year in our series and gave a wonderful concert. And he's got another wonderful concert planned for us today. Just one note, and that is that in the program, the last piece is missing, and that is the Toccata in G by Théodore Dubois. So in addition to the ones that are listed in the program, we'll also have the Toccata by Dubois. It is listed in the program notes that are inside the program, but that's missing from the list. So just hold your applause for, well, you don't hold your applause, but just realize there will be one more piece after the last one that's listed. And now, please help me to welcome Roy Belfield.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Today's recital means so much to me for so many different reasons, and as I share my connections to my mentors, colleagues, and teachers, you'll know why this program is especially dear to me. The Toccata that you heard by David Hegarty was written for a collection of toccatas published by Lorenz Publishing Company. About 2 years ago, I found this piece, but I didn't know anything about Mr. Hegarty, so I found his website, hoping that he would respond to my inquiry about his toccata and his biographical information. He actually responded, and he said this about his toccata, and I quote, "During my tenure with Lorenz Publishing Company back in the 70s, I was assigned to put together a book of toccatas from our large archive of past publications. After selecting the compositions I wanted to include, I still had 7 pages remaining, so I wrote the toccata to fill those 7 pages, never dreaming that it would become my most popular composition," end quote. And we became fast friends, and he even sent me some more of his organ music. Dr. Adolphus Hailstork I met in the 1990s through my first organ teacher, Dr. Carl Harris Jr. They were at that time music colleagues at Norfolk State University in Virginia. As a master's student, I chose Dr. Hailstork's Suite for Organ for my master's project. I had to analyze it and, of course, perform it for my master's recital. So I was in constant communication with him about the work that he wrote in the late 60s, I believe. He is still very much an active composer. He's now retired from Old Dominion University and has quite a bit of organ music in print. David Stills was my mentor while I was a student at Morehouse College. He was college organist during my days at Morehouse College. What I find very interesting about David Stills, he is a native or was a native of Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't know this until near the end of his life. He grew up with Martin Luther King Jr. and his siblings and was a member of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, where he served as organist for much of his life. In fact, the current instrument was designed by David Stills. And if you note in my bio, I studied organ with Dr. Joyce Finch Johnson while I was a student at Morehouse College. Joyce Johnson was on the faculty at Spelman College. Her first organ teacher when she became a faculty member was David Stills. I met John Dixon in 2019. We were members of the Tidewater chapter of the American Guild of Organists in Virginia. After we connected, he shared several of his organ works with me. And as you can see from the program notes, he is still an active composer. John Dixon is currently National Treasurer for the American Guild of Organists. Please enjoy the next 3 pieces. I'll return to speak about my connections to the last 3 composers. Thank you. Philip McIntyre. I met Philip in 1989 when I was a student at Morehouse College. We have a mutual friend. Her name is Doris Overton. Doris and I talk just about every day. Doris and Philip grew up together in Portsmouth, Virginia. They even went to the same junior high school. And when I mentioned the name to Doris, she said, "Oh yes, Philip and I actually went to the prom." Philip spent most of his adult life in the D.C., Maryland area. In fact, he served the following churches in the area: Metropolitan AME Church here in D.C., Grace Presbyterian in Baltimore, and Lincoln Congregational Church in D.C. That was his final position before his death. When I met Philip, he gave me just about all of his unpublished organ music. In fact, we were exchanging organ music by black composers. Subsequently, when I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City, to work on my doctorate, I wanted to take that opportunity to document Philip's life and his legacy. And much to my delight, my major professor, Dr. John Obetz, allowed me to do this. My doctoral lecture recital was entitled "The Organ Music of Philip Barnett McIntyre." The culmination of my research was the publication of all of Philip's organ music in one anthology by Wayne Leupold Editions in North Carolina. Philip and I had a lot in common. We were both natives of Virginia, and we served the same church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, in Richmond at different times. Philip was at Ebenezer from 1969 until 1974. I was at Ebenezer from 1995 until 1998. And when I entered the doors of Ebenezer, the first name I heard was Philip McIntyre. Do you know Philip? We loved Philip. Philip is not only an organist and a composer of organ music, he has much choral music still in print and a collection of spirituals for voice and piano. Buckner Gamby. Buckner Gamby was my piano teacher while I was in high school. In addition to his classical training at the New England Conservatory of Music, Mr. Gamby was also quite comfortable playing jazz. In fact, he played jazz in the Army while stationed in Fairbanks, Alaska. I first heard Mr. Gamby improvise on the hymn, "I Am Bound for the Promised Land," in 1984 during a morning worship service at his church, First Baptist Church, in my hometown, Petersburg. At that time, everywhere I went, I carried something called a tape recorder. In 1994, I shared that recording with Mr. Gamby and asked him to write out his improvisation. Let me back up. In 1984, when he was playing this piece, he was improvising. I thought at the time it was a composition, but after I learned his style of improvising, I realized, oh no, he's improvising, he's not reading anything. He did, in fact, in 1994, he did, in fact, write that out for me. Today, I am playing from a copy of the manuscript, but fortunately, again, Wayne Leupold put this work in print. Mr. Gamby also taught music theory, and you will hear elements of counterpoint, harmonic manipulation, and jazz in his composition. Please keep in mind when you hear Mr. Gamby's piece that it was originally an improvisation. Undine Smith-Moore. I met Undine Smith-Moore in 1983 at her church, Belfield Baptist Church in Petersburg. My first organ teacher, Carl Harris, who was organist at Belfield at that time, introduced us. When I met Undine Moore, I was 15 years old, and she became my mentor. After Carl Harris moved to Norfolk State University in 1984, I succeeded him and became organist at Undine Moore's church, Belfield Baptist Church. Before I left for college in 1986, Undine Moore said to me, and I quote, "If you are going to be a serious music student, you must have a Harvard Dictionary of Music," end quote. She gave me one of her earlier editions, which bears her signature. In 1987, I asked Undine Moore for a copy of her unpublished work, and she graciously sent it to me. Today, I am playing from a copy of that manuscript. However, the piece is now in print. I do thank you all for being here today. Thank you again, Mike, for inviting me to play here at National City Christian Church. It is by far one of my favorite instruments. Thank you, the audience, for being here today. You had a choice, and I do appreciate your choosing to be here. And as you heard, the final piece will be Toccata in G. I'll give you his dates, Mr. Dubois, 1837 to 1924. So maybe it was appropriate that it wasn't on the list of my mentors, because I did not know him. Please enjoy Phillip McIntyre's Sorrows. Mr. Gamby's I Am Bound for the Promised Land. Undine Moore's Variations on Nettleton, which is also called Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And finally, the Toccata in G by Dubois. Thank you. again for coming. Have a good afternoon.
Roy,